And joining us to discuss, federal defense attorney Ronald W. Chapman, the second, plus criminal defense attorney Jacqueline Goodman. Great to have you with us here. Jacqueline, do you anticipate a fourth indictment? And if so, what effect do you think this would have on the former president?
Well, all eyes are on Georgia. I think the betting is that there will be an indictment. I think the odds are in favor of an indictment coming from Georgia, given all the information we have. And the big difference between the Georgia indictment and the others we've seen, there's two really. Number one, this is a state prosecution in Georgia. So a president, and Mr. Trump, should he win the next election, could not pardon any crimes that are convicted in a state court. So major difference, not only here, but actually as it relates to the ramifications of the other indictments federally that we've seen. And the second big difference, and maybe this is the biggest difference for Donald Trump, is that televisions are not allowed in the federal courts. And in the state of New York, they're actually quite restrictive in the use of cameras we've seen on those prosecutions, but not so much true for Georgia, and that might make all the difference.
Yeah, that might be interesting. Ronald, let me ask you about this. The scenario, I just want to get to the back part of this because I think it's an interesting question. If we went through this process in Georgia, however long it took, and the former president, if it happened before the election, were found guilty, and again, I'm not saying he would be. If he were, is there any way Georgia could say, well, you were convicted of a crime, we can't put you on our ballot here in the state of Georgia for president? Or does the Constitution say, no, you just have to be 35, you have to be a natural-born U.S. citizen? What are your thoughts?
Well, the Constitution controls here because, as we know, Georgia is a battleground state, and a decision in that state could shift the election substantially and make a decision for the entire country. So if that sort of case got up to the Supreme Court, I imagine that Donald Trump would actually come out victorious. But of course, baked into that hypothetical is a lot of uncertainty. Right. We had a 2.5-year investigation, no chance that a trial against Donald Trump in Georgia actually gets completed before this election, even if they move forward with a prosecution right now. And of course, a conviction is even more tenuous here. We're talking about an indictment based on the supposed fake electors scam that Fani Willis has been investigating. We're just stacking inference upon inference when we look at a charge like that, especially with Jack Smith's current federal indictment pending before a federal court.
And Ronald, you're a federal defense attorney. So if he would be indicted in Georgia for election interference, is it possible to even charge him with that, considering he's already been indicted federally for what sounds like the same thing?
That's a great question, and many folks don't know this, but the double jeopardy clause only applies to the same sovereign. So when you face federal charges, you can face almost identical state charges related to the similar course of conduct, meaning Donald Trump can be charged for the same conduct. But here's where this case really gets interesting. We have two offices, one Georgia prosecutors, the other special counsel Jack Smith, essentially looking at the same conduct. When you look at the federal indictment here, Georgia incidents are mentioned about 48 times. It covers about 1/10 of the indictment. This conduct is already being addressed by a federal court. So the real burning question on everybody's mind appears to be, why do we need this new Georgia indictment? And of course, the reason was just mentioned by our other guest, so that Donald Trump could not be pardoned if he in fact won the election.
Yeah, another Georgian representative, Marjorie Taylor Greene, said this: she would vote for Trump even if he's in jail. But if, that's one of the things that a lot of people feel. Jacqueline, what other things should we be thinking about when it comes to Georgia?
Well, the statements in the Georgia case mirror, as we've seen in the Jack Smith indictment. But some of the information in Georgia, I think, is going to be unique to that prosecution. There are statements that are missing from the indictment that we've heard about, at least secondary sources from the news, about statements that Donald Trump allegedly made. It's unique in the state of Georgia. He is a sitting president, allegedly pressuring a state official to change the election results. And this wasn't mentioned at length in the federal indictment, but in the Georgia information, we've seen that the allegations are that the president pressured the state official on the threat of criminal charges coming if he didn't find a certain number of votes. And so that hour-long conversation, I think, is going to be at the heart of this Georgia prosecution. And clearly the issue of pardons in the future, I think, is central to why prosecutors in Georgia decided to move forward. And it's specific to these charges with no other January 6th information involved. So I agree, though, this is not going to happen before the election.
All right, Jacqueline Goodman, Ronald W. Chapman II, appreciate your insights. Thank you.